Is my mic not?
You don't need to do that.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
You want to take a roll, JJ?
Oh, I'm trying to double check pictures just to see where we're at. Looks like Sean's not with us yet. And Mr. Silva's there. We're just missing Sean.
Oh, I see Sean.
Oh, there he
Sean's
is.
connecting. He's in the process of connecting.
Okay.
Looks like.
Okay. Let's just make sure everybody, Sean, you're good to go? Shelly, good to go? Michael Silva, good to go? Cherie, good to go? Mr. Kitsis, good to go? And Tracy, are you good?
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. Looks like we're all here. So let's go ahead and bring this meeting to order, come back out of closed session. Welcome everybody to our second online meeting. Look forward to going through this process. Rules of engagement, please. If you would like to talk on the subject, please just go ahead and chat to me and I'll keep an eye on that instead of trying to keep an eye on everybody's hands. I'd appreciate, excuse me, other than myself and the speaker, that we keep all our mics muted so we don't pick up anything in the background, or try not to. And we will go forward from there. So with that, if we could start with a moment of reflection, be great. Okay, and then if we could do, did that come up? We could do the pledge.
Fantastic.
Everybody stand up if we can see you. And I'll lead you. And ready, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All righty. Okay, one thing that went well, very good. Jane, any changes to the agenda as presented this evening?
No, no changes.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Motion by Wyndham, second by Silva. And this is going to be a roll call vote. All our votes again tonight are going to be roll call. So Shelly?
Yes.
Cherie?
Yeah.
Tracy?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
And Mike. Did we get those mixed up, or are we good?
The last one will go for Kitsis. I already said yes.
Okay, all right, very good. All right. Report on closed session actions. During closed session, the board discussed personnel issues, bargaining unit negotiations, existing litigation, and real property negotiations. The following actions were taken during closed session. Number one, we approve the appointment of Anna Farina as principal of Jepson Middle School by a unanimous roll call vote of 7-0. Congratulations. We approve the appointment of Melissa Manini as Dean of Learning Support at Vacapina Middle School by a unanimous roll call vote of 7-0. Congratulations. And we approve the appointment of Aaron Tolliver as Assistant Principal, Vacaville High School by unanimous roll call vote of 7-0. Congratulations. And we also approved a confidential settlement agreement for OAH case number 2020-01-0404 by unanimous roll call vote of 7-0. All right. And with that, we'd like to go to item number 11, which is a public hearing, the consideration of the Ernest Kimmy Charter Academy for Independent Learning Charter Revision. And Sasha, I have you as the first up to speak.
Yes, thank you. Good evening to our governing board, President Jansen, Superintendent Shamia. This evening, I will be joined by Lois Chancellor, Amy Blackstone, and Kelly Burks, and we'll be sharing some information about the charter revision that is on the agenda tonight for a public hearing. As you know, anytime a charter school is proposing, a material revision to their petition, they must bring that forward to the board. As you also know, VUSD has been in the planning stages of this particular revision for much of this school year. As a district, we have been researching and reviewing different options for our continuation program at Country High School. And what we're presenting tonight is the culmination of much of those efforts into the proposed charter revision, incorporating a new pathway, the Work Readiness Alternative Pathway, or WRAP as it's going to be called, into the existing charter. We want to move to the next slide. The proposed revisions tonight are in the areas of the educational program, enrollment and admissions, as well as the budget. So the educational program will be impacted by the addition of this pathway, which will focus specifically on career and credit recovery. You'll hear about a little bit more about that pathway from Amy in a moment. In addition to this, Kimmy is proposing some changes to their enrollment and admissions in an effort to ensure that we are serving the very students that we're hoping to capture with this pathway. But with that being said, we're creating some language that prioritizes current Country High students for the 2020-2021 enrollment period, as well as the long-term goal of prioritizing Vacaville Unified students next year and in the future for access to this program. We want to ensure that the students within our own district have priority to address their credit recovery needs in a comprehensive way through Kimmy's new pathway. Finally, this evening, with those changes come some significant budget changes, and Kelly will take some time to walk us through the revised multi-year projections and talk about what that's going to mean for the district going forward in collaboration with the charter. So with that, I will pass it off to Lois, and we can move to the next slide.
I've tried to unmute myself and see the next slide at the same time. So what's new? What's new at Kimmy Charter? Oh, what's the same? That's my part here. So what's the same? Kimmy Charter is going to continue to its tradition, blended, personalized learning for all students, and offer academic delivery options that suit the individual student needs. We'll continue with interventions by grade level, by subject, and individualized small academic group support will also continue. Under a strong leadership team with me and Amy together with our whole dedicated staff, we will uphold continuing the district's and state standards and involvement in all stakeholders in decision-making and community outreach to engage all of our learners. So what's new? What's different? Well, first of all, we have a brand new facility. The dual building facility will house our dual pathway educational system. It allows great growth for both sides. The college readiness path at 194 Bella Vista is more than double the learning space for Kimmy Kings. And will include a second science lab, which allows us to complete our UC A to G pathway opportunity without the need for dual enrollment for chemistry. In Building 188, our new career readiness pathway offers increased staff, increased support, and new learning opportunities for our students. The Kimmy Wrap Path is an exciting addition to Kimmy Charter. Please allow me now to turn this over to my colleague and co-principal, Amy Blackstone.
Good evening, board members, Superintendent Shamiya. I'm here tonight to talk about the differences in what's going to be new in the Career Readiness Program, which we are very, very excited about. Once we decided that Country High School would merge with Kimmy Charter, we knew we needed to see what models were out there to help us formulate our vision. Our goal was to develop a pathway where students in need of credit recovery would find a place that helped them graduate with a plan in place for their future. Two significant components for the new pathway will include Big Picture Learning and Project-Based Learning. Big Picture Learning is a learning platform designed to help students identify who they are, what they are interested in for life after high school, and experiences that support those goals. Students are placed in advisory classes that serve as their home base from enrollment to graduation. Through daily advisory classes and activities, students begin to explore their areas of interest as well as their aptitudes. This information is then used to help students begin exploring career options for after high school. Career exploration through Big Picture includes research, field trips, job shadowing, and then community-based partnerships or internships. As part of the research into the viability of this program, Kelly Birch and I met with Kimberly Lewis, principal of Liberty High School in Benicia, to pick her brain, learn the basics, and listen to her share what worked and what didn't in regards to their implementation of Big Picture Learning. We took that information and made contact with the local representative to begin brainstorming how this would work for our career pathway. Although the school closures have interrupted our process with Big Picture Learning, staff have been sent links to complete training online. The training is very extensive and walks all staff members through how to develop community within their advisory classes, how to support students in exploring areas of interest, and how to support students with community-based partnerships, just to name a few things. I have already begun to participate in Big Picture Learning collaboration meetings with leaders from other schools, and we're also working on rescheduling a visit to Confluence High School in Auburn, a highly recognized Big Picture Learning school, with a group of our staff members, so we can see it in action. Another area of exploration was changing the way we engage students within the classroom itself. We know that students engage more with curriculum if they see real-world relevance of what they are working on. We brought in the Buck Institute Project-Based Learning. Project-based learning is a cross-curricular approach that engages students in the collaborative problem-solving of real-world issues. Students work together with the teacher as a guide to develop a product that demonstrates their learning. Project-based learning not only supports the teaching of content, but also those important soft skills that students will need to be competitive in the job market. Collaboration, effective communication, problem solving, and public speaking are key skills that all students will develop through project-based learning. All Country High School teachers, members of Kimmy's staff, and other teachers from the district attended a 3-day initial training on project-based learning back in February. It was a very well-received training, and the teachers are excited to begin implementing their projects. A follow-up day was scheduled for May, but is now being pushed to October so that teachers have the opportunity to try the project that they designed during training and be able to debrief on the experience. The staff at the current Country High School have been a part of the decision-making and conversation through this entire process, giving feedback and input on ideas to make this pathway the best option for our students. We have had extensive brainstorming sessions to develop a vision, create a name that identifies what our pathway does, and develop a bell schedule that allows for the flexibility to meet each student's individual needs. We will continue to work on Big Picture Learning through the online modules over the summer and start next year with implementing strong advisory classes and engaging project-based learning strategies. Thank you.
And if we can move to the next slide, we're going to have Ed Santapadre kind of kick us off on a bit of the budget conversation.
Good evening, board and superintendent. As we talk about the budget for this blended school, one of the things we thought would be important is for you to see some history of what's happened in the past with the budget. And the reality is, Country High being a school that's credit recovery, continuation, has always had a contribution from the district, meaning that the number of students and the ADA didn't equal the staff and expenses to support them. We knew that. It's always been part of our district. We wanted you to see that, so when you see this charter and a contribution from the district, you have a context of this is not a new contribution. This is something that has always been there. And we believe as we move forward, it's really going to be better under this light of a charter where we can look at the budget and make those changes necessary to get it more in line with its revenue and expenses. In fact, we've already done some things where there's been positions, both classified and certificated, where people left and we haven't filled them, where in years past we would have just filled them. It would have been that. So we didn't want it to be sticker shock as you look at the contribution. If you just think back, however many years you want to go back, there's always been a pretty large contribution from the district to that program. So now we're hoping with the light shining on it and better outcomes for students, that it's really going to be worth it. So I'll pass it over to Kelly Burks now to run you through the budget sheets.
Thank you. Good evening, board members and Superintendent Shamiya. Can you all hear me okay? Can I get a thumbs up? Okay, great. So we are bringing a budget forward tonight for the charter revision. We based that on the enrollment that is currently in place in 1920 for both Kimmy and Country High, and just combined that current enrollment. Also, it's based on the governor's January budget, which had a 2.29% COLA, which we know has changed. Yesterday, COLA came out and it's actually at 2.31%, but that remains to be seen of whether they'll fund it fully. But I thought that was positive, that it's actually higher. And then also for certificated salaries, we have 25.43 FTE that are included in the certificated salaries, and that includes the administrators, teachers, and counselors. And then like Mr. Santapadre mentioned, we didn't fill one of the teaching positions. It was a voluntary transfer to another district school. And then for the classified salaries, we're at 6.35 FTE, and that includes all clerical staff, custodial, campus supervisor, and a health clerk. And it also, as mentioned before, we didn't fill the student support vacancy. It was a position that was funded with Title I, and because those Title I funds will not go to Kimmy, because Kimmy is not a Title I school, we decided not to fill that position as well. And then in the benefit category, we included the increases to the PERS and STIRS rates for next year, which are large increases. And actually today, STIRS changed. It's now going to be 19.1. So things are just changing so rapidly in these times with the current environment that we're in. So things will change, and when we bring budget forward, we'll make those revisions. And this is the multi-year projection. And again, as I said on the previous slide, it includes what's in the January revision of the governor's budget, which has a positive COLA in all 3 years. So we've included that in this multi-year projection as well. And then with that, we are making a district contribution to fund the program fully, because these types of programs typically have a low student-to-teacher ratio. So we'll be taking a look at that before we finalize the budget. We also included step and column increases of 1.5%, which is what we average in the past trends. And then we also included the PERS and STIRS rate increases in all 3 years, because in all 3 years they do continue to grow. And then we also based the supplies and services on the consumer price index, which I also have a feeling will change with the May revise. And then in the past, we typically charge 15% for those administrative services that are done for the district on the charter's behalf. And in the next 3 years, we've decided to lower that to 10% for all 3 years. So looking forward, as we go forward, we're going to finalize the staffing. A new LCFF calculator will come out with the COLAs that we will use in all 3 years, as well as I think the enrollment projections will change. I think the ones that we've budgeted with are pretty conservative. And in this new world that we're all living in with distance learning, I think we might see that some students decide that this is really a good option for them. You know, because when this all happened and we all kind of got turned upside down, Kimmy just kind of kept doing what Kimmy does because they were already living in this environment. And I think some students might decide that this is really a good thing for them. So we're going to keep a good eye on those projections and see what happens going forward. And then, like I said, we will attend the May revised, and it's going to be virtual this year on May 19th, where we will get those much needed COLAs. And so we can see what those changes will really do in those out years for our revenues. And then we'll also adjust the consumer price index with the school services dartboard, which usually also comes out the same day. And then we'll bring forward that new budget for your consideration at the June board meeting for that proposal. So I think things will change between now and then. But this is what we know now, and that's what we base the budget on for your consideration. Are there any questions?
Mr. Silva.
Thank you. Thanks for the good presentation. I'm a big fan of project-based learning, so I'm really excited to hear that to be implemented. I think it's a perfect blend between really taking like these hands-on semi-approach or interactive approach while still addressing the academics. So I think it's like a perfect blend. So it's something that even in my role as a professor, I really try to implement as best I can. It's definitely a challenge because you got to keep coming up with stuff. So, but I think it's a huge tool. One question, I guess, more so on the charter. So I know we were looking at trying to go towards, I think, calling it a job shadow internship. If we have a shutdown, does that impact our charter qualifications or anything like that? If as far as if there's still quote unquote a shutdown or quarantine or something like that, would it negatively hurt us?
Yeah, I'm not sure I exactly understand your question. Are you asking if it would hurt us if there's a shutdown because then we wouldn't be able to provide some of the job shadowing opportunities that we're now looking? Okay. So I think that won't hurt the charter in the sense that, yes, this is our attempt and what we plan to do in this pathway. But if there are continued shutdowns, you know, I think that will just be an opportunity for us to continue to be creative and look at, are there virtual opportunities to do some of that work? And I think Amy and her team have already kind of started recognizing that the world is a little bit different now, and we might have to get more creative with how we approach some of these internships and opportunities for students just for that reason. So
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, then at this time, I'd like to go ahead and open up the public hearing on this topic. If you have a comment or concern, go ahead and just put your name in the chat box and we will let you address it. And I don't want to go too hasty because sometimes figuring this thing out takes a little bit. So, okay, with not seeing any, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time. And we will be revisiting the charter petition in the form of an agenda item for approval within the next 60 days. Okay. Great. At this time, comments from the floor. These are limited to 3 minutes at a time for items that are not on the agenda. Again, if you'd like to speak comments from the floor, just go ahead and chat your name to me and I will give you some time. Long, uncomfortable pause. Okay, we'll break that. We'll go on to item 13, the superintendent's comments and correspondence. Jane.
Thank you, JJ. I have 2 people I'm going to call up to give some updates. I just wanted to also let the board know that on May 14th, the next board meeting, we're going to have some principals come and speak to you about the amazing things our teachers are doing and our principals over distance learning. I know some of you have seen all the videos and heard what's going on, but I'm actually looking forward to allowing the principals come share with you what a great job everyone is doing. But I'd like to start with Kelly Burks. I asked Kelly to give us a budget update. She's done a lot of research in the past week because there's a lot of information out there about what our budget may look like. So she's put it all together succinctly in a document that's attached to the agenda, but she's also going to talk a little more about it tonight. So our interim CBO, Kelly Burks.
Thank you. Good evening again, board members and Superintendent Shamiya. So attached to the document is an update that we provided on how we think things will look different from the last time that we were with you, which was for second interim. Things have drastically changed. And so we want to just go over some different things that we think will impact the budget for both closing our year for 1920, as well as opening our next year for 2021. So some revenues are going to be changing for our unaudited actuals for closing the books for 1920. We believe we're going to see a reduction in our federal revenues, and we estimate this to be around $250,000. And this is because part of our funding for our federal funds comes from Medi-Cal, and those funds are generated with the claims that we submit through the school year. And now because the school year has been cut short and those claims are not being provided, that revenue stream will not be what we thought it was going to be at second interim. So we'll see a reduction there, as well as with our title programs. We believe that we could see a reduction in those funds as well in current year. And that's due to them diverting those funds to the COVID-19 efforts and part of that $2.2 trillion package. But we have yet to see what those numbers are yet. And then we did receive, good news, some COVID-19 funds at about $193,000. Those funds have already been received and we already have spent them. We spent them on ServPro, coming in and doing a deep clean for our facilities, as well as custodial supplies that were needed to do some of that cleaning, because in addition to ServPro, our own custodial staff also helped with some of the cleaning. And then we also are going to provide in 5 of our facilities parking lot Wi-Fi, so that students with distance learning that may not have internet connections at home will be able to work on their distance learning and access that from the parking lots. And then the last thing is the child nutrition. We're going to make a contribution to them because of the lost revenues that they have. We estimate those revenues to be about $200,000 in local revenues that they'll lose just from the kids that won't be eating meals every day and aren't coming to get the meals while the school's closed, as well as an approximate $350,000 from federal and state revenues that they also will not have. So we'll use the remainder of these funds to help towards that contribution. And then additional expenditures for this current fiscal year. We basically moved up buying another 1,000 Chromebooks, when we moved that up from what we were going to do next year into this year. So then we were able to surplus some of those older Chromebooks earlier and get those out to the students for distance learning. But that is a cost in our budget for this year that we did not have at second interim. And then again, those wireless networks. And then I did actually speak with Mr. Cardone about an updated profit and loss statement for where he thinks revenues are at. Because originally we had looked at the contribution that would be needed, and we were estimating that around $570,000. And his numbers are up. And actually during spring break, we had a really good week of serving kids meals, which was some additional revenue that we were able to bring in that we normally wouldn't have had because we would have been closed for spring break. So now we're estimating that the contribution will actually be closer to about $400,000. And we hope to continue to see those numbers increase for the meals that we're serving as the school year goes on. So that was really good news to hear today as well. And then we also think we'll have some additional savings in this year just due to not having those substitute costs that we normally have, when teachers are out at professional development or ill. So we're estimating a savings there, as well as with our unfilled vacancies that we're not going to fill for the rest of the year. So that's about $1 million savings. So that's good news. And then also just with our other expenditures, our supplies and our other operating expenses, we think we're going to have a savings about $500,000. Just in our utilities, we're looking more like a summer month now for the last few months of the year, which will have a huge savings for PG&E. So that's kind of how I think it'll look different for 1920. Are there any questions about that before I move on to 2021?
Just one quick question. Sorry, Marty, the funds, the 193, did that come from the state? Just to clarify.
Yes.
And then I think it was announced that Betsy DeVos released $13.5 billion, but to all 50 states and territories. So each state has to apply for that, but you haven't heard anything on that yet, correct?
I actually have. I was going to talk about that when I got to the MYP
Okay,
section,
we can talk about that then. It's okay.
Okay.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll move on to 2021 if there's no other questions. So how we think the revenues are going to look different for 2021. As I said, the COLA did come out yesterday. It's at 2.31%, which is actually up from January. But we won't know if the state will fully fund that until we actually have the May revised. So once we attend that, then we'll have a better idea of what our COLAs will look like. And just to get an idea of how much 1% is just for Vacaville, it's about $1 million. So anytime you look at that COLA and you see what the change is, for every 1%, it's $1 million in revenue for us. And then also they're saying that it's going to be a workload budget, which is defined by the Department of Finance. And basically that means that we're going to get what we get from 1920, plus or minus COLA, which is why that COLA is so important, and then plus or minus changes in the state enrollment. So once we have that May revise, we'll have a better idea of what that will be for the impact for us here. And then also on the expenditure side, we moved forward with the supplemental early retirement for our certificated staff. And there is a cost for that, but the net, I think we'll realize a savings of about $650,000 a year for the next 5 years. So that's a big savings and an area that I feel like we're kind of ahead of the curve. Because actually an early retirement incentive was something that was suggested during these times. And we've already gone through that and are in progress, and we'll realize those savings as early as our next year's budget. And then we've already talked about COLA, and then also the PERS and STRS rates are all over the place, depending on how quick the economy recovers. Whether we have a quick recovery, a medium recovery, or a slow recovery can drastically change what those PERS and STRS rates are. And, the PERS saw the biggest loss that they've seen, $69 billion in losses, which is the largest they've seen since the Great Recession. And so we just don't know how they're going to react because of those losses yet. And so that remains to be seen. We might see things like a rate holiday, which means they'll freeze our rate for this time until the economy recovers. But then because of that holiday, we'll get hit harder with greater rate increases in those future years. Or they may choose to gradually, even though we're in hard times, continue to increase those rates. So there's a lot to be seen as far as the STRS and PERS rates go, which will have a big impact on our budget. So then I went through and prepared a couple of multi-year projection scenarios. And on the handout, we did a best case and a worst case, which they are very drastically different from each other. There's a lot of things that go into that. Of course, one of the biggest factors is COLA, because that makes up the majority of our revenue that's coming in. So that's a huge change for us. And also, I was out looking and doing some reading yesterday, and the state, California is kind of unique as far as our revenues. So most states across the United States, they are at about 47% on what they get for their general fund revenues from personal income tax and sales tax, where California, our general revenues are closer to 59%. So that's a big difference. And of that 59% that were funded from the state of California for schools, The personal income tax and the sales tax makes up 85% of that 59%. So in an economic downturn, California schools are usually hit harder than other parts of the country. And we can talk about that more if you'd like to. But I found that interesting just to know that California is unique in that way. And then also, as Mr. Silva had said, I went out and did some early projections on what I estimate that we will receive from that $2.2 trillion package. So for Vacaville, I think that's going to translate into about $1.3 million. They have not put a timeline on that, on when we'll receive those revenues. So it could be this year. I was actually impressed how quickly the state actually provided their COVID-19 funds. So I don't know if the federal government will move as quickly. So we might see that as early as 1920, or it might not be until next year. But that's good news. It's based on the Title I allocations. So I was actually surprised we got as big of a piece of the pie as I think we're going to. And so they're calling them emergency secondary school. Wait, what was it? It's ESSER. What was the abbreviation again? Oh, elementary and secondary schools emergency relief funds, ESSER funds. You guys remember the days from the Great Recession? They were ARA funds, and now they're ESSER funds. So we get a new name, and $1.3 million. So that was good news. So we'll be keeping a close eye on the pensions and what they're going to do. That's going to have a big impact, as well as the COLAs. So the COLAs that we used in the two different scenarios in the handout were the governor's budget from January is the best case scenario. And then worst case scenario, we used a 1% negative COLA in all 3 years. I don't think that's going to happen. I really think what's going to happen is somewhere in the middle. And I think 1920 will be okay, and we'll have those emergency relief funds. I think it's the next year that we're going to have to really take a hard look at. So then moving forward onto cash flow. Cash becomes really important in these times of economic downturn. So we'll keep a close eye on that. Once we know what COLA is, we'll go through and we'll run those scenarios on cash flow. They are also talking about the return of the deferrals, which is not good news. They said it could happen as early as June of 2020. They would defer into July of 2020, so a 1-month deferral, which doesn't sound like a lot or a big deal, but it really is, because June is a big month for us for our revenues that we get from the state, because we get a quarterly payment from those Education Protection Act funds, as well as our monthly apportionment. So that would be a big deal in cash for us if we have to move that. And just to get an idea of how much cash goes out every month, just in our payroll, $9.5 million is the payroll for us for 1 month. So cash is important. We'll keep a close eye on that. We do have cash and other funds if we do need to do any kind of inter-fund borrowing, but we'll use that as a last resort. And then just next steps, we're just going to staff really cautiously. HR and business are working very closely together, and we won't be adding any FTE probably in the next couple of years, and just being really cautious on what we do staff and seeing what happens with natural attrition. And then we'll attend the May revise, and that's where we'll get all of our updated information. So I'm really looking forward to that. I just want to know. And then we also applied for FEMA funds. So we've applied for that, and I actually spoke with the FEMA rep on Friday, and he said we have a good chance of getting funded for part of what we requested at least. We think for sure we'll get funded for the contracts that we did for the cleaning. They said contracts are really easy to look at and approve. So I think we'll get something, so that's good news. And also I think we're positioned really well. You know, as a district right now, we've done a lot of really hard work over the last couple of years that's really put us in a really good financial position. And so the work of the board that's been done has put us in a good place. So I'm thankful for that. Are there any questions?
I have a question.
Mr. Wyndham, all yours. Sorry, I was muted.
Kelly, thank you. That was a great presentation. I guess my question, though, you said $9.5 million is the payroll monthly for the district, correct?
Right.
That doesn't include other operating costs, right? That doesn't include things like the PG&E and all those other things. So that's just in salaries and benefits, I presume?
Yes, that's correct.
and I don't mean to put you on the spot, certainly okay if you don't. I'm just question, do you know how much additional and operating costs that would be monthly? Just, I know it changes. I mean, there's a lot of variables with that, but just on average.
On average, it's about another $7 million in just other operating costs on a monthly basis.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Great job.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you. Jane?
Thank you, Kelly. Great job. And as Kelly said, we'll know more for the May revise. And we are in a really good position. There's a lot of districts that have declining enrollment that have already been this past year working on reductions. So we're really fortunate that we have a healthy fund balance. So there's a lot of things we can bear for a couple of years, hopefully, even if it gets really dismal. The second person I'd like to bring up for updates is Kate. Kate, oh, I struggle with her last name. Kate.
It's okay. Don't worry about it. Hi.
Hi, Kate. So at the last board meeting, Tracy Stacy asked specifically about mental health and how we're serving students. So Kate Lorenzen is going to speak, our lead mental health clinician. Hi, Kate.
Hi. So updates, we do continue to provide services to students. Most clinicians have gotten a hold of about 2/3 of their caseload. For those that we haven't been able to get a hold of, we continue to reach out weekly. We're also providing support to parents. We've gotten about 8 new referrals from admin, teachers, parents, and students referring themselves. So services continue. We've also been attending trainings, both pandemic related, so teletherapy. We want to make sure we're following all the legal guidelines there and doing that appropriately, as well as just general like anxiety in the brain and how we can rewire our brains. And that's all been wonderful information for us to have. Over the summer, we plan to work on committees again. We'll have an emergency response committee, so we'll have a team of people who kind of lay it all out and kind of gather all the information we've gotten so far from this pandemic. And so if there's ever a fire or any other, catastrophe that we need to prepare for, we'll be prepared ahead of time. We'll be doing MTSS curriculum streamlining. So we'll get the curriculums that the schools plan to use and kind of streamline those so they're easy to use. And we'll also be focusing on anti-bullying, both in general and just in preparation for returning to school. We want to make sure all the kids are going back and feeling comfortable and safe, and that everyone is, continuing to maintain a culture of kindness. I will be focusing on updating the mental health clinician webpage to include more resources and things like that. Any questions?
Michael. Mr. Kitsis, you're muted. And
there we go.
And I didn't do it.
You were controlling me. Kate, how many students are being seen by telehealth at this point?
It's hard to count just because there are certain students who are receiving their special ed services and gen ed services. There are also students who are being seen just for check-ins. There's students who, they say they're fine, but their parents need support. So it's kind of like, it varies by week.
And what telehealth platform are you using?
We're using DoxyMe.
Is that working okay? We've actually, at the county, we use DoxyMe as well at times, and we found that as there've been more telehealth used, the bandwidth with DoxyWith is kind of an issue, and sometimes we get a lot of buffering, we can't connect. So do you know if you're having any of those issues?
I haven't had any of those issues yet, but we also have Zoom as kind of a backup, because since both are HIPAA compliant, and then also telephone. So if anything were to go wrong, we have ahead of time spoken with the student or their parent about how we will get a hold of them if for some reason the platform doesn't work.
Okay, and are you doing any face-to-face at all?
No.
Okay, great, thank you. Appreciate that you're keeping it up.
Thanks.
Tracy.
So thank you so much, Jane. Thank you so much, Kate. I'm excited. I'm not excited. I'm happy to hear that we're still serving parents and students and families, and that people were comfortable to still refer. That's really cool. And I would just ask work when you're doing the MTSS curriculum. A lot of my friends have littler kids, and it's been fascinating to me to hear the littles, the kindergarten, first, second, third graders say, oh, when the COVID's gone, like sometimes flippantly, like they have this relationship to the TV and what they're hearing people say. And so, not that this is any different than any other traumatic event, but I'm wondering if there's, to your point about rewiring your brain, if there's a way to embed that culture change or shift or support when we come back, however you guys think is best, to just help people to rebuild that connection and safety and mindfully, right? Like to recognize there might be some kids that have some trauma, or it's going to take them a while to assimilate to school again.
Yes. Over the summer, we'll get together and figure out wording and how we want to put all that together, but we'll, of course, speak with people about returning and what that might look like and how difficult that might be for some kids.
I appreciate that. And I guess I would say too then, even with the, just keep us posted on the needs. Like if things go crazy, we may or may not have, who knows what our budget looks like, but I just want us to stay apprised because I know how hard you guys work. And I'm certain the needs are going to go up. So I just keep us apprised on that. So thank you.
Will do. Thanks.
Okay, nobody else? Mr. Silva.
All right, thanks. You mentioned that that kids are doing fine. Was that right? And parents maybe need some more supports. So what kind, are there any common themes that you guys are noticing with the kids needs, or they're just doing well?
Well, so not all kids are doing well. There are some kids who are doing well, but maybe their parents need support. So one of our clinicians, for example, spoke with a parent for 40 minutes, and it sounded like the parent just needed to kind of speak to another adult and get just, some emotional support, just in the ability to talk to somebody about what's going on for them and their child. So that's what that's looked like so far.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Jane, did you have anything else?
That concludes my comments. Thank you. Thank you so much, Kate.
Thank you. I would like to end by thanking the board for having the foresight to build such a robust mental health clinician team, because I think we will be a lot better prepared than some other districts to go back and help everyone kind of cope with returning to school after months of being out.
Awesome. You guys rock.
Good. Thank you, and thank you for both your presentations. Okay, item 14, board member comments. Mr. Kitsis.
Yeah, just briefly, Jane, I don't know necessarily you have to speak to it, but I know we've had a couple of emails back and forth. I just think we have to gently talk about, that there is, a potentially really bad situation for next year. And there's potentially, if the state is really hurting, then we might be really hurting. And, people are talking about, scenarios trying to get it started with 5%, 10%, or even more of cuts. And we all hope that's not going to happen, but I think we all have to be in the mindset of that might happen, and just kind of be thinking about that. That's all. Just keep it in the
Thank you, Mike. I agree. I appreciate that.
Anybody else? Seeing none, hearing none, we're going to move on. Student board representative reports. I know one of them had to leave, but let's just go down the list. Buckingham Charter Magnet School, Annalisa Galvin, are you there?
Yes.
Hey, very good. All yours.
During this time full of stress and uncertainty, Buckingham has been able to maintain its strong bond in our community through Zoom classes and online Spirit Weeks. During our Spirit Week, we had days such as Memory Monday, in which students posted their favorite picture of their high school experience, TikTok Tuesday, in which students posted their favorite TikToks, Workout Wednesday, in which students posted their favorite personal workouts or posted a picture of them exercising, Throwback Thursday, in which students posted pictures from their childhood, and lastly, Flash Forward Friday, in which seniors posted their future colleges and the rest of the student body posted careers they wanted to pursue or their dream colleges. We have also been able to elect our ASB executive officers for the 2020-2021 school year. And we have Annalisa Galvan serving as next year's ASB treasurer, Rebecca Cruz as next year's ASB secretary, Shannon Galera as next year's ASB vice president, and Francesca Kabul as next year's ASB president. As we continue to live in this new reality, Buckingham staff and leadership has and will continue to support and strengthen each other during this difficult time.
All right, perfect. And so I take it this is not Annalisa Galvin then?
No,
Oh,
it was a switch of the names.
switch of the names. Via Calderon?
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your input there. I'm not sure if the Vacaville High rep is still with us. On the page here was Nick Finnegan, but I got a message from Elia's phone. Anyone from Vacaville High? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to Wood and Rayanne West.
Hello.
Hi.
I just wanted to start by saying good evening to everyone, and it's really nice to see you guys again, even if it's over a laptop or, in my case, a phone. It's been kind of a pretty crazy time for everyone, no matter our ages, and I hope you guys are all doing okay and adjusting as best as you can. I wanted to start things off with a little bit of a positive note. These were some student shout outs for our teachers. There is a bunch on my page which I gave to you guys, but I only wanted to say 2 quick ones for time. This one is to Coach Voigt. The student says, he always understood me and the way I think was able to help me become the best player I can be, allowing me to do that, and I greatly appreciate him for everything he's done for me. There's another one saying, there are 2 teachers from Wood that have always been there for me, and they are Miss Jimenez and Mr. Blansett. They are kind, funny, and believed in me. I was the best version of myself around them and the best student version of myself in their classes. Moving on from that, Wilsey Wood, like most other schools, has been working on adjusting and reassessing our outlook for the remainder of this school year. We have already put on some successful virtual events in hopes to keep the students and staff connected. Shortly after we were informed that we would be out of school for longer than 2 weeks, our Sylvan Singers released a fun melody they had pieced together in hopes to raise the spirits of our students. The video has now been seen by over 5,000 people and has brought smiles to all those who have watched it. Wilsey Wood could not be more proud or thankful to have these talented students on our campus singing happiness into our lives. We didn't want to give up on all the hard work that had been put into our spring rally, so instead we transformed that into a virtual video and uploaded it to YouTube. We showcased lots of amazing students, from Riley Miller singing the national anthem, recognizing sports teams, Catherine Whittet singing Dear Hate, Miss Jimenez lip syncing to Call Me Maybe, Raina Sardo reading some of her original poetry, and a very special surprise ending from the teachers and staff. Our rallies are special to us, and we didn't want to let the stay-at-home orders stop us from celebrating all the amazing people we have on our campus. Each and every one of our students is special and loved. We wanted to use this video to let them know that. But we couldn't stop there. Our annual poetry slam was no longer going to happen, so we decided to make sure these poets would get the audience they deserve. These students worked really hard to express themselves, to send a message through their words. A senior, Imani Bell, even wrote a new poem addressing the situation that is occurring as we speak, and urging people to stay home to protect others. Thankfully, before we left school, we had our elections and our interviews to decide next year's student council. Our new council has met over Zoom 5 times since then and have already been discussing homecoming next year. Student council has also begun doing Teachers' Choice Awards. They're basically like Grammys, but they're for the seniors, and the teachers who teach the seniors get to vote. This is a new event for Wilsey Wood, and it's about the teachers of seniors, recognizing them for their scholarship, passion, integrity, reflection, and involvement, or spirit, as we call it. Each department at Wood nominates 1 senior for each of those categories and has completed a write-up and a video about that senior and why they were nominated. We will be streaming this video live for our school at the end of May. And I know this is getting kind of long. I promise I am almost finished. I just have one last thing to share. I was asked by my leadership advisor to share how online learning has been affecting me and other students. As a representative, I feel it is important that I report as honest as possible. Learning from home is not easy. It is almost impossible to focus when there are distractions brewing all around you. People are feeling stir crazy, nervous, and quite frankly, overwhelmed. It feels like as soon as you finish one assignment, 2 more appear. This is a time no one has experienced before. No one knows what to do. There are students who are trying their best, but without the learning environment of school, they are finding things twice as hard to accomplish. I myself struggle with finding motivation and being able to concentrate in order to get things done. The workload may be less, but the circumstances increase the difficulty. School and our education is incredibly important, but in order to learn, our mental health needs to be healthy. Right now, people everywhere are struggling. Mental well-being needs to be one of the top priorities. But with that said, I know all of us Wildcats, students and teachers alike, are doing our very best in this time. Thank you for giving me the chance to speak.
All right, well, Rayanne, thank you very much for your point of view and your input and your school report. And Via, you as well, thank you very much for joining us tonight. All right, item 16, anybody from either bargaining unit here like to speak, BTA or SEIU? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to item 17A. Mr. Banowitz, facilities and maintenance update.
Yes, good evening, board, President Jansen and Superintendent Shamiya. I have a few things to go over. First of all, to say that we're not slowing down. We're not stopping. We're not slowing down. In Measure A, we have Sierra Vista Increment 3. We're moving fast to complete that project, and that will get us out of Sierra Vista. After all the work that we've done there, we are looking at a completion around May 15th, and we'll be moving admin into their new spaces the week of May 18th. So we'll be wrapping that up, and you'll be seeing final change orders and notice of completions shortly. Zanino Stadium project, the turf is now down and complete and looks great. They have been working all week about laying the track down. The weather is perfect for laying that new track down, so it'll be working on this week and next week, and we are still on track for a May 18th completion. At Markham, the MP room is continuing. We're moving forward. It's all sealed up. We have a roof now, and so they're working on the outside and the inside. They've been working on stucco on the outside, putting out the walls on the outside, and been working on that for the last couple of weeks. So we're working on that building, the site work around that. And then this week, we started bringing in Building O. Started bringing in the modular pieces. They were craned in this week, so we're going to continue that. And we're on schedule to open the MP room in mid to late July. And that will be given to, that will give Child Nutrition and Juan some time to get everything set up in that new kitchen and everything ready for an August opening. Along with all the next round of classrooms will also be opening up in August. We're on track for that. So we're going to see more classrooms coming in and more portables moving out. The new Buckingham on McClellan Street, we are continuing to plan on that. We had a great meeting. We meet every Thursday morning with the design team, and we're going over ideas on how to best set up that new campus with the MP room and the classrooms, along with the parking lot and everything else that we're doing out there. We are continuing to do that. The real good news with Measure A is we were able to get the final issuance completed, and the final $71 million for that will be in the bank hopefully by tomorrow, if not today, according to Kelly Pointon today. So great news is we got the final $71 million for the program. The oh goodness part is now the clock is ticking. We've got 3 years to get this done. So I've been working on new phasing for projects, the final projects, and I will be presenting that to you in future board meetings to figure out, we are very confident we're going to get this done in time. It's just a matter of which projects are going to go at the same time. So we're actually really excited about that. Bella Vista Road, the tenant improvements for the 188 and 194 buildings. We are opening bids on May 6th. We've had a good turnout, even though it was voluntary, but we've had a lot of good discussions with contractors. There's a lot of interest, so we're hoping for a good result there. For the Bethany Lutheran Church site, we've got some paperwork coming to at a future board meeting to work on that. Another good thing is our maintenance workers are back to work. They're back to work full time. They started on Monday. We met with them Monday morning outside, distance apart, but we met with them. They were actually, a lot of them were just really happy to be back to work, and they're excited. We have an opportunity here to get our work done, and they're there to work on it. We're working on getting operations, the custodians back full time in the next, hopefully in the week or two, so we can get everything cleaned up and ready. So when we do reopen, these schools are going to be spectacular for these kids to come back to. If you don't have any questions, that's all I have for tonight.
Anybody? Questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much, Dan.
Good job, Dan. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, we're going to move on to action items 18A, adoption of resolution number 25, 2019, 2020, elimination and or reduction of classified employee services. And I wish to introduce Chris on this topic, please.
Yeah, so this is a proposal to essentially right-size our EL services. We've got a loss of Title III funding, but we also have an overstaffing of EL services at some of our secondary sites. So this proposal is just to bring that staffing into a more transparent alignment, and also bring our budget into alignment with the lower funding from Title III.
Very good. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Kitsis, second by Mrs. Daly. And any questions? Okay, roll call vote. Shelley?
Yes.
Very good. Cherie?
Yes.
Tracy?
Tracy told me that her phone was dying and she had some other personal thing. So she told me she might have to leave early. So she probably had to drop out.
Okay, do that. Mr. Kitsis?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Mike, sorry.
No.
No, and myself is a yes. So we have, is it 5 yeses and 1 no, right? Very good.
Yeah.
Okay. Item 18B, adoption of resolution number 26, 2019, 2020, support for applications for eligibility determination and funding in the school facility program when the bond authority is exhausted. That is a mouthful. Do I have a motion?
I'll make it.
Motion by Wyndham, second. Second by, is it Mr. Kitsis?
Yep.
Fantastic. Roll call vote again. Shelley?
Yes.
Cherie?
Yes.
Michael Kitsis?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
And myself is a yes as well. Approval of waiver to temporarily suspend board policy 6146.1, high school graduation requirements. Mr. Santapadre.
Thank you. We presented last time to the board about the reduction in credits needed to graduate for this year's senior class, reducing them to 200 from 220 at Wilsey Wood, Buckingham, Vaca High, and Kimmy, and down to 180 at Country High. As we've been going along and getting into distant learning, I'm not sure I could say it better than Rayanne from Wilsey Wood said it when she said, this is hard. And it is hard on our students, and it's especially hard on our seniors because of all the other things they're missing out in addition to having to do work alone and by themselves and with little brothers and sisters around. So we think this really is the right thing to do for our seniors. We believe this will positively impact a group of seniors. Maybe out of the 1,000 graduates, this might get us somewhere between 60 and 80 more graduates who really would have graduated, who would have completed all the requirements had we stayed in school. And we really didn't want to harm students because of this pandemic that weren't going to make it, that we're going to make it. So we really think, especially now as we've jumped into this, that this is the right number for our students and will assist the right students to graduate. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Ed. So do I have a motion to have the board temporarily suspend board policy 6146.1, high school graduation requirements for the remainder of the 2019-2020 school year as presented?
I'll make it.
Okay, motion by Wyndham, second by, I see Shelley and Cherie's hand up. Another roll call vote. Shelley?
Discussion real quick.
Oh, by all means, I'm sorry, didn't look up.
I know different districts have looked at different options, and I looked at California Department of Ed and the recommendations. There's different options that even I was considering, how I felt, and even what's been discussed with us at the college. I'm not comfortable supporting this particular effort. And if you guys can please bear with me, I'll express why. I think so. But first, can someone answer how many students we have not been able to actually contact?
So I don't think I can give you an exact number. I know that each of the schools at all of the levels are feverishly calling and trying to contact people. And again, don't forget, we're really in week 2 of distance learning, and if most of the teachers are giving weekly learning plans, the first set of work just came in of Monday this week. So there are Google Docs at every school, and counselors and teachers and administrators are contacting. I don't have a number yet, but as soon as I do, I will share that with you.
Thank you, Ed. So I think it's really stems off of that reason in itself, that we don't know what a lot of students are going through. And if we're talking about seniors, and if we're really trying to help address their needs, to basically help, recognizing that they're going through these struggles, hey, let's reduce the requirements and focus on these other classes that are essentially required. I understand the intent of that. I totally get it. But to me, to hold kids accountable when we ourselves are still trying to figure out this process, when students are still trying to find access to online resources, I personally have trouble trying to hold them accountable for that. And if we're trying to give them a break, I would support putting up a scale A through D grading scale rather than reducing credits. I think also by reducing credits, it also puts up it also really challenges how many students have we delayed their graduation requirements for the same issues that they're still encountering now in the past. How many students have dropped out because we required additional credits that we're saying that, hey, that's not really necessary. So I think for me and where I really stand with this, I really would support a grading scale that's A through D, and part of that also is just for the reasons that I mentioned. I also feel that if we're trying to talk about, hey, how do we give them a break? How do we work with them so that way they can get their degree and get on with their life? I think that does that. I totally understand, and I also feel, and even I have this internal conflict within me, because we want kids to earn stuff. We have that whole notion. We want people to earn something or put some effort into it. But I just got off of this really robust, interesting conference earlier, just before this, and just heard from a student that he's working full time now at a grocery store, so that way he can make sure that he can number one, have some funds to help out his sister and his mom, and on top of that, he's also working at a grocery store, so that way he can get their family can get a discount on the food. So it was really not right now. His priority isn't necessarily school. and those grades, his priority is making sure that he helps family survive. And yeah, there's different funding, and that's a mess in itself from what we're hearing. But I think that really for students, versus students that are really they are earning it, they are finding ways to persevere, they are finding ways to do it, just may not be academically. To me, I'd like to see support a scaling grade A through D grading scale, and I'm kind of curious to see where the rest of the board feels.
We have a motion and a second. If there's some discussion on this, we can continue to discuss. Cherie, I see your hand up, and Michael, you're next.
Ed, can you clarify for me, because my understanding is what we're talking about is credit efficiency. So it has nothing to do with the grading. These are kids who are missing some classes that we would typically require them to have. There's no way for them to make this up. So what we're doing is actually by doing it this way, we're providing more grace to the student.
It's the students, really the students who we're seeing will help are students who either needed all 6 of the classes that they're in to graduate, or all 6 plus 1 or 2. And they're maybe doing an online class simultaneously. These are students who were within sort of shooting distance of graduating. And again, with all of the things everyone has talked about, with those pressures, we felt like taking away the elective pieces and just focusing on really, government or econ, whichever you're in, and some of those would really help them. And I think, when talking to Amy from Country High, it looks like about 26 seniors who won't have to be 5th year because of this change in credits. So I think at Vaca High and Wood and Buckingham, Mr. Silva's proposal certainly would work. The students are in the classes they need to graduate. I think Country High, we would lose some students because by not reducing the number of credits, there will be several of those who will have to come back for a 5th year.
Thank you.
Mr. Kitsis.
Yeah, so I guess what I want to understand is, I think I understand what Ed's saying. Mike, can you explain how the lowering the requirements wouldn't help the people that the kid that you're talking about?
So you're asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking you, are there kids that would not be helped by what Ed is saying?
So so just to clarify, Ed, so if we put something in place where all seniors got, let's say they were going to fail, but we give them, they get a D, right? If they have a D, we wouldn't, my understanding is we wouldn't need to lower any credits. So they wouldn't have to drop any electives. They would get a D in those electives or the required courses. So that way they can still get their diploma and move on.
That's for the students who were in the right number of classes. See, again, at Country High, there are students who this 4th quarter would have picked up some additional units, some additional classes. There's more of a rolling start and stop to that. So I think you're right. Really, at the comprehensive schools, although this may have captured a couple of students even at the comprehensive schools that maybe were going to need summer school and now won't. So they would have been within 10 credits. They were in 6 classes and maybe they needed 8, or they were in 8 classes and maybe they needed 10. By this reduction, it's capturing them so they don't have to do summer school as well. I think if you're considering that, I think it's almost a both that you want to do. The students we're worrying about are the ones who Michael are describing just can't do any work because they're working full time, because of whatever, just can't do any work. And even in those situations, our teachers have talked about, if they left at the 3rd quarter with a pretty decent grade, and then they just can't do any, and we've talked to them and they're trying, they just can't, they're going to end up with that C or D. If they left with an A or a B, they're going to end up with that. The students that I think teachers are, and we're all a little bit reluctant on giving a D to, is the student who left the third quarter, and senior or no senior, but the student who left the third quarter with a 32%, hadn't really done much, isn't still doing much, and then they get a D for that class. Even a senior is a little, I think that's sort of the balance of that.
But if I could just say what I want to understand, are there any kids that Mike is talking about that aren't, like, which is more permissive? You know, in other words, the moving the credits down, does that take care of the kids that Mike's talking about too? In other words, if you want to get both of them, does one cover both?
I don't think one covers both fully, because I think the one we've proposed is capturing a lot of students. Again, I think it's probably the numbers between 60 and 80, and these are students who had a shot and maybe would graduate, or certainly through summer school probably make it. I think the students Mr. Silva is talking about are students who maybe are within that range. You know, maybe they would be captured by it, but they just can't do any work. And so will an F in senior English or an F in econ eliminate them? But his alone would not capture the A through D, and not changing the graduation requirements. We would lose some students there as well, especially at Country High, but could be anywhere else, because those students needed more than the 6 classes that they were in at the time we went out.
Okay,
And
so what I'm understanding, and then let's say a kid is a senior and he gets an F in English, he can't graduate even if the credits are lower, because he didn't make the requirement. Is that right?
Correct.
So it's those kids that would not get the benefit of that.
Correct. And then on the other end, the students who needed more than the 6 classes they were in, and that reduction to 200 or 180 is sort of sweeping them up and capturing them. They wouldn't, if we just said, whatever classes you're in, you get an A through a D.
So the district is just proposing a decrease in the amount of credits, but you still need the same requirements, the same amount of English and the same amount of, you know, whatever.
If the classes you are in is a required class, then you need to pass that. So if you're taking an 11th grade, retaking an 11th grade world history, yes. Really, the seniors we're talking about, it's usually about 3 of the classes they're in are the required ones: senior English, government and econ, and maybe one other thing, you know, an English 10 or a US history. And then they're in 3 or 4 electives, and we're wiping those clean and just having them focus on the couple.
So you're just wiping the electives clean and not the core.
Correct. And health.
Can I make a follow-up question?
Yeah.
Ed, so what would this mean long-term? I know it's we're saying it's temporary, but what implications could this potentially mean long-term, with the possibility of making this even permanent?
Of changing the credit requirements?
Yes.
I don't think anyone's really given a lot of thought to reducing credit requirements kind of long term. Although, if as we start next year, if we are going to school in a very different way than we ever anticipated, again, I think that might be a conversation at some point for the board to have. But I don't think if we get back to school in a more meaningful way next year, and by, you know, whenever we're sort of back and doing things pretty full time, our 220 again is in the range of most other districts. Some districts have a little higher than that. They have 230 or 240 as their requirements. So I think ours already has a little buffer into it. Really, a student in their 4 years can not pass 4 classes and still graduate. And so, you know, 220 has seemed to work pretty well to graduate a lot of students in regular times, and that's not right now.
So Ed, what's your opinion on if we did them both? Is there heartache in that, or what's your professional opinion if that was to be proposed at a future meeting?
I actually don't have a lot of heartache with it. I think, especially as we get more data as to who's not participating, if we have seniors that we really think, boy, this is somebody who was sort of on track, not, had some bumps in the road, but really getting there to graduate, and now we just can't get a hold of them, or we can't get them to do any work at all, and they had a C- or a D+ at the quarter. That's the student I think Michael's talking about and I worry about. Again, I think our staff and what we're concerned about is a senior who wasn't going to necessarily graduate, didn't do much for the third quarter, again, for whatever reason, and all of a sudden gets a gift D. That's sort of the only one that feels a little different, but no, I don't have great heartburn with it.
Michael, you had your hand up.
Me?
Yes.
Well, to me, there's a very interesting conversation. I mean, the question kind of becomes, I appreciate what the district is proposing, period. And I think what Mike's talking about is, in this time of COVID, with a lot of stress on everybody, we've given out, as Jane wrote today, 4,500 Chromebooks. So there are tons of kids that aren't connected, that needed help being connected because they didn't have any device at home that they could use. I mean, if we end up like, let's say there are 10 kids that would have graduated high school if they didn't get an F in English in their last semester, do we really want to focus on that, or do we want to say, okay, this is an unusual situation, and let's just not make the kid come back 4 months or 5 months later to try to continue and get a not failing grade in one course? That's to me, that's the question.
So I can ask if you would like to see that agendized on a future meeting, board members.
I would like for us to put it up for a vote next meeting of having a scale, the A through D grading scale, during times of emergency, not during regular times.
And it wouldn't be a problem doing it next meeting. There'd be still time if we decided to do that to make it happen.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's an easy thing to make happen.
Anybody else's thoughts or thumbs up or down? So we'll go Michael, Shelley, and then
Sean has a comment. Oh, sorry, bud.
Sorry, that's who I meant. You were sitting next to Mike. So Sean, Shelley, and then Cherie.
Thank you. I appreciate the conversation. I think these are important things to consider and discuss. But I think one of the things for me, I want to make sure that whatever we're doing brings the balance of resiliency as well. Because one of the things that I have heard from parents and I have seen, there's a lot. I mean, all of us, whether we're essential workers and having to go to work every day through this, or whether we're not fortunate enough to have the ability to earn a living through this, on both sides of it. I mean, we have to find ways to cope and to deal with things. And so I just think we have to, in my view, and from some of the feedback I've gotten from community members, is that anything we do needs to be balanced with resiliency and still, even during difficult times, helping students to work through it to a certain degree. I'm not saying that we should maintain the same standard, and that's completely unrealistic. But at the same time, I mean, there are some students that are going to need a lot of grace, and I think we need to be in a position to help them and support them. But I think for me, I want to hear more about support rather than just simply because I think a lot of what we could be talking about here is sort of saying, well, this is a really rough time, so we're just going to kind of just, everybody kind of gets to graduate at this point, and I think we have to be careful with that. So that's just my thought.
Perfect. Shelley.
Okay. My question is, from what I understood, and maybe I understood wrong, isn't it that their grades are not going to be lower than they were during third quarter if they're doing some work at all? Was that the case, Ed?
Their grades would not be significantly lower.
Right.
These aren't, seniors are going to graduate if they're doing anything, if they're showing up. I've heard, even the other day we were on a call with our teachers union group who was meeting, and they were talking about, be patient, be flexible. It's sort of an inflated grade time. We're going to give higher grades than we normally would, and that's okay. So really, Shelley, I'm not concerned about a student who's attempting some things. I have complete confidence that they're going to graduate. The student I'm worried about is the one who maybe had a C or a D at the quarter in things they needed, and just hasn't done any work, doesn't turn anything in for the 6 weeks of distance learning, and all good efforts, and people are trying to get a hold of, and parents are trying, and that's really, I think, the case. I think a student who had any sort of a grade kind of going into the quarter, because again, third quarter, that's half of the semester. So half of the semester was done in school, and the teachers are really on board for not sort of saying, well, half and half, it's a D, I think they're really okay with that. But again, as all of you, I'm just concerned if there is a student, for whatever reason, because of the stress, because of work, because of just doesn't do anything.
Okay, and that's my question was, if that's the case, then the only thing that I think personally is that it becomes the responsibility of the student to at least contact teachers and have a discussion with them if the teachers can't reach them. Because if the student, as Mike was describing, is unable to do any work, he still has a responsibility as part of becoming a growing adult, and his parents can help that, to contact the schools and say, this is where I am. And then we look at it as a case-by-case basis. I don't want any children to fall through the cracks or any students, but I do think they need to take some responsibility, if not to do the work, to at least contact and work through the system. And I think the teachers and the principals would be amenable to that. Yeah.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No,
and that's been part of our plan the whole time, is if a student or a family contacts us and says, wow, here's what's going on, we're just not getting to it. I think all of that, it's just been, and again, I don't know how many yet, but it's just been the no contact. And so that's the person we're most worried about. The ones who contact, the ones who say, hey, I don't have any internet, or I can't get to this because I'm working, I think we'll work with them. And if they had, again, if they had a 32% going in, again, that's sort of the tricky part. And I have received the third quarter grades, and I'm looking through those as cumulative, like what percentage of seniors had Fs going, at that point. So all of that, I think, factors in. But if the student communicates with us and tells us, really just works with us, we're going to find a way to get them through. It's the ones who maybe were really in trouble, sort of grade wise, kind of going in, and there's just no feedback or contact, or the parents say, yes, I'll try and get them to do this, and then we can't.
Okay, thank you.
Cherie.
Hey, this is my thought. I mean, I've got one of the seniors right now, and I get, not all of our kiddos, I totally understand, have parent support and are asking the homework questions the way that I am, but these are young adults now. They are in their last quarter with us, 17 and 18-year-olds. And like the one that Michael Silva was referencing, he clearly has self-advocacy skills because he has a job. So I don't believe that we benefit these children if we don't require them to have some self-advocacy and at 17 and 18 reach out to their school, because we have, as a district, and as we have made it as easy as we know how, and we're trying to get hold of the kids. So that's why I'm not in support of that. If we were talking junior high kids, even freshman kids, but these are our last trimester senior kids or last quarter senior kids. So that's just my thought.
Michael.
Yeah. So
hold on. Mr. Kitsis, then
I'll be
Mr.
quick.
Silva.
I'll be quick. You know, in a way, it's interesting listening to the conversation. Like we're kind of debating how many angels are on the head of a pin. Like, so maybe by the next meeting, if we could get the number of kids that this affects, and maybe you can also give us some idea about their situations, then we could all make a really intelligent, you know, result.
Mr. Silva.
Yeah, I think that's we haven't been able to reach these students because for whatever reason, whatever we've been doing, and it's no fault on any individual, any personnel. I understand that. I mean, three of us on this board work with mental health issues. The rest of us in our career have to deal with mental health as part of our regular careers. So I think there's no like clear way on actually how to address each individual need, and I just don't see how we can hold students accountable when we're still trying to figure stuff out on our own, and they themselves are still trying to figure things out on their own. And that's just where I stand. So that's why I support a A through D grading scale.
So what I could bring next time to the meeting, if you'd like, is sort of a list or a number of students, maybe what their third quarter grade was in the class that's mattering, and then whatever information sort of that could.
That would be great.
That'd be great. Is there any way, Ed, that you could get that to us before the meeting? Because then we can kind of do some decision making prior to the next meeting.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And you know, they're really working on it as we speak. They're digging through, and there's a lot of names on it now, and some of them are you know, people who we know are doing some work. So it might be one class they maybe haven't done something in, and so we really have to figure out really which seniors are this impacting to the point of not being able to graduate.
So what we can do, Mr. Jansen, is we can get that information out to everybody, and then Mr. Silva, you and I can talk. And if you want, I don't know if you want it now or you want to base it on the information, we could bring board policy 5121 is the one that addresses grading, and we can bring that back for an adjustment or some kind of amendment around that board policy. How's that sound? Because I know I want to look
at 2 points. So one, I really appreciate the conversation that's going on. This is a hot topic in academics. And two, Ed, I really want to thank you for enlightening me on the one detail about the students with respect to continuation student, how this would impact them. So I'm ready to vote on this one personally.
So I just want clarification.
But I still would like to see. I still would like us to see where we stand on this A through D scale.
Okay.
Officially. So only during times of emergency.
Jane, what I would suggest, if it's all right, is that we have Ed provide us as much information as soon as he can, reasonably, right? Accurate information as he always does. And then you and I can at least have a conversation, and maybe you can speak to the board members individually to see if the energy is there to agendize this item or not. You know, that way we're not talking to each other on it. We'll just funnel it through you.
Okay.
Could I ask one clarifying question? Are we talking about A through D just for these graduating seniors, or are we saying all high school students for the same reasons on their transcript? So I know what I'm looking for.
For me personally, seniors during times of emergency.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I think that's hopefully an easier number for you to get. So
much easier.
If I could just say, John, I don't think you were saying this, but I just want to make sure that it actually, you know, only takes one board member to put something on the agenda. So I don't think you were asking for a consensus to put it on the agenda, right?
You can, obviously, any board member can request an item to be agendized. It doesn't mean it always gets agendized, but you can request the item.
Okay, we can talk about, you know, what the rule is around it, but I hear you.
Yeah. Okay, so with that, no other questions. We're going to move forward on the vote. Two, just for clarification purposes. It's requested that the board temporarily suspend board policy 6146.1, the high school graduation requirements, only for the remainder of the 2019-2020 school year. And roll call vote, Shelley.
Yes.
Cherie.
Yes.
Michael Kitsis.
Yes.
Sean.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
And myself is a yes as well. All right, very good discussion. With that, eight item, my blood sugar's going low. There was no dinner provided tonight. Jay, I thought you were going to DoorDash dinner to everybody, but I guess not. Okay. Item 18D, and it is approval of waiver of temporarily suspending board policy 5141.31. I believe Romero is going to speak on this item.
Good evening, board members, President Jansen, Superintendent Shamia. Yeah, the purpose of this is I'm requesting that we temporarily suspend board policy 5141.31, which is immunizations. This temporary suspension will only be for the remainder of this school year, which would be 2019-20. There was a little bit of a concern whether this suspension would violate some other laws like Ed Code and obviously California Code of Regulations and health and safety codes. But after further analysis, it is very clear that those laws only pertain to students when they are physically present at school. So now that we are on distance learning for the remainder of the school year, the suspension does not necessarily impact or go against any of those specific laws regarding immunization requirements. The purpose as to why we're requesting this is primarily we have students that may be coming in from out of the state or possibly from private schools, online schools, home schools that are requesting to attend school for the last 5-6 weeks of school with us. And if they don't have those requirements, we pretty much are going to have to say no to those students. And that is something that we're concerned about. We want them to be educated. We know they deserve it just as well as everyone else. And so we're just asking for that temporary suspension until June 4th. In the meantime, when students do register, don't have the required immunizations, they do receive a letter from the district stating that we are temporarily allowing them to attend on distance learning. However, they are required to submit all required immunization items to the school in order for them to physically start the school year, which we hope is in August, obviously. But that's something that we've made very, very clear. We've also created a spreadsheet just for the board to know that every school site has access to. In this spreadsheet, secretaries update the information by student name, as well as what is it that they're needing as far as immunization that hasn't been provided yet. And we keep record of that so that come the last week of school, they're going to start making those calls to those parents and families, reminding them, hey, just FYI, thank you, we're about to end the school year, but now you need to submit the rest of the items for 2020-21.
Very good. Okay, so it's requested that the board temporarily suspend board policy 5141.31, immunizations for the remainder of the 2019-2020 school year. Do I have a motion? Motion by Shelley, second by Cherie. Any questions before I move on? Roll call vote. Shelley.
I have some questions again.
You got to get quicker. Okay, go.
I typed it, man. I typed it. All right, so thanks, Ramiro. So at first I was really shocked to hear this, and I'm glad, I appreciate the extra information. I think one of the things I'm concerned about is if those immunizations weren't administered within 2 weeks to they're actually on campus. What I don't want to see is us switch one epidemic to another, or know that's debatable, but I don't want to see us switch one issue to another epidemic with measles or whatever else that may come up, particularly with measles. So is there a system in place to look to see if, or can we actually require that they have had their immunizations within 2 weeks of their arrival to campus?
So just for clarification, are you asking, are we going to be requesting that they provide us with that information prior to the school year starting 2 weeks prior? Is that what I'm just?
Well, I think you already clarified that they have to have the immunization. They have to provide that record before they start. What if they just got it the day before? What if they had their immunizations the day before the day they submitted the document? That's the day before start of school, for example.
So our nurses are really good of just being able to keep up with, who has the immunization, who doesn't as well. So what they do is if they started the process, there's a way that we can allow them to begin the school year, depending on how many immunizations they have, and then be able to finish off within a specific timeline for that to happen. But ultimately, it's really one of those things where if the student does not have the required immunizations, they cannot start. There's some immunization, I think, from my understanding, that can be waived temporarily as long as the shots have already begun for that student.
Booster. So I guess just let me elaborate. It takes 2 weeks for us to build. It takes 2 weeks for us to build up antibodies to actually to have some type of memory or defense against some type of infectious disease. So for me, I like to see if we go through. I don't know how this would work, but I like to see to make sure that whoever had vaccines, that those vaccines were actually administered 2 weeks or more to where allowed their body to actually build up immunity within that time. Otherwise, they're not going to be immune, and I think, increase the risk of spreading a highly contagious disease such as measles.
But do we do that now?
Oh, and
So
Ramiro?
if I can jump in, Ramiro, is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so that is not currently how we operate. So the nurses do have the ability, as Ramiro was saying, to allow some students to come in on a schedule of when those immunizations happen. But to my knowledge, there is not a 2-week waiting period right now for immunizations when we exclude a student from school. And so I don't see that changing. I think one of the other components is right now, a lot of students aren't able to get immunizations, are those coming into kindergarten and then 7th grade next year for TDAP, who are our 2 big age groups that we look at for immunizations. And so it is quite likely that we're going to have students kind of rushing before the school year to get those immunizations. And I don't foresee that we'll be having a 2-week waiting period because that's not currently required by law.
So that's that's a concern of mine. I think, and you bring up another good point, and so I wanted to bring this up too during this moment. Is there was a time where I flew to Peru, took a 2-hour drive up into the Andes in the Sacred Valley, where the Incan ruins are at. Took a 1-hour hike to this built up little hub, this little house structure, and spent the night there. And for over 2 days, we were able to actually immunize and give basic services to this population. To me, I'd like to see us start discussing the possibility of actually providing immunizations on our school sites. Particularly given the option for parents to allow those injections to happen on a school site. I think a lot of times it's difficult for particularly our working families to take time off to get their kids to get their influenza. We say we never saw this coming. This was a big shock. Those signs have been there. There was a school in Oklahoma that had to be shut down because the counselor died, and there was like 40 kids sick because of influenza. I think it's time that we discuss and possibly even figure out how can we better address public health. I know that's not a discussion, it's not on the agenda or whatnot, but I think it's worth having that discussion moving forward. I have concerns about the 2-week period, but this is we're talking about them having to provide the documentation. They have until June. But I find it troubling that Solano County says that we have sufficient PPE, but yet our healthcare systems that we're paying $2,000 a month, whether it be taxpayer money or whether it be our, part of it out of our own premium, and we can't even access the healthcare services that we're paying for, particularly with our kids and immunizations. It's not like they're not subjected to it because people are still going out. So, I guess
Okay, on that topic, any other questions? Fantastic. We'll move forward with the vote. Still a roll call vote. Shelley,
Yes.
Cherie,
Yeah.
Mr. Kitsis,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Mr. Silva,
yes.
and myself is a yes as well. Fantastic. Item 18E, approval of contract of Resource Environmental, Inc. for the old district office demolition project. It's requested that we approve the contract for Resource Environmental, Inc. in the amount not to exceed $233,000 for the old district office demolition project.
I'll make the motion.
I have a motion for Mr. Kitsis, second by Cherie. Any questions? Are you typing, Mike?
Who?
Okay, just double checking. All right. Shelley,
Yes.
Cherie,
Yes.
Mr. Kitsis,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Mr. Silva,
Yes.
and myself is a yes as well. All right, item 18F, requested the board approve the proposal with the Sierra School Equipment Company in the amount not to exceed $99,858.85 for the Markham Elementary School Improvement Project. Do I have a motion? Motion by Cherie, second by Shelley. Roll call vote. Any questions? Seeing none. Shelley,
Yes.
Cherie,
Yes.
Mr. Kitsis,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Mr. Silva,
Yes.
and myself is a yes as well. Item 18G, approval of proposal with the same company, Sierra School Equipment Company, in the amount not to exceed $201,435.81 for the 100 McClellan Street project. Do I have a motion?
I'll make it.
Motion by Sean, second by Shelley. Any questions? Seeing none, roll call. Shelley,
Yes.
Cherie,
Yes.
Mike, Mr. Kitsis, sorry.
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Mr. Silva,
Yes.
and myself is a yes as well. All right, 18H, approval of the request of the board approve the proposal with the Valley relocation in the amount not to exceed $124,078 for the 188 and 194 Bella Vista 100 McClellan Street projects. Do I have a motion?
I'll make it.
Motion by Mr. Wyndham, second by Cherie. Any questions? Seeing none, roll call. Shelley,
Yes.
Cherie,
Yes.
Mr. Kitsis,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Mr. Silva,
Yes.
and myself is a yes as well. Number 19, the consent calendar. No change to the consent calendar, correct, Jane?
Correct, no change.
Fantastic. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented?
I'll make it.
Motion by Sean, second by Shelley. Roll call vote. Shelley,
Yes.
Cherie,
Yes.
Mr. Kitsis,
Yep.
Sean,
Yes.
Mr. Silva,
Yes.
and myself is a yes as well. All right, and that concludes our meeting. We have future business, regular board meetings on May 14th and both May 28th. Thank you all of the board members for a lively evening and a great round of discussions. And thank you to everybody else who has to be here and anybody else who doesn't have to be here. So with that, we have no items, correct, Jane, to go back to closed session with?
No, just thank you, JJ. Great job.
Fantastic. And thank you very much. And good night, Vacaville.
All right.
Thanks.
JJ, you still here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, perfect. I think we end it, and then something should pop up on your screen of the recording, and then we can work on it from there.
Okay, let me do that, and I'll end it and go from there. The one that downloaded earlier, it worked, but I didn't know if it was a closed session or a regular meeting, so I have to go back and watch it.
Gotcha.
So are you around tomorrow?
Yep, I'll be actually in the office if you want to do something then.
Okay, what time are you going to be in?
It doesn't matter. What time do you need me in?
I don't need you in at any time. That's why I asked you what time.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Do you want to do maybe we could do noon?
Do you have any meetings at all?
No, I was just going to go in and edit some stuff.
Okay, I'll just text you in the morning and see what you have available. We'll go from there.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, thanks.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.